For Fernald, asylum can be seen in two ways. In one sense, it protects those inside the asylum from those outside, as in political asylum. But in another sense, and the dominant one in Fernald's day, the asylum will keep society free from defects by putting defective people away from society.
If you drive by the Pineland Center in New Gloucester today, it's hard to imagine that it too once looked a lot like the film clip you just saw. Institutions for the mentally disabled were notorious for their deplorable conditions, overcrowding, and inadequate sanitation.
Our next guest became familiar with the Fernald Institution in Waltham, Massachusetts, because his uncle Joe was a patient there. Today, Bill Rogers is a documentary filmmaker whose latest film will be shown next week at the Maine International Film Festival in Waterville. He was kind enough to stop by tonight to talk with us about his entry. It's a film called Front Wards, Back Wards. What is it about this film that's so compelling? Because 30 were screened, and this is one of 11 that was chosen to be shown.
Yeah, I think the title Front Wards, Back Wards refers to that the institution had the front wards, which were for mainly the brighter residents, who really took care of themselves, and in some ways they took care of the institution. Then the back wards are for the severely disabled people, the ones who really have a very hard time managing basic things, so they were left to those back wards and largely shunned away and pushed away from society. And so it's that, what I was really interested in is that sort of double layer of both those very capable as well as those who were extremely disabled, and how did they all get contained by the same place?
What do you think it is that struck a nerve with people that we want to see this? Because it's a hard subject.
Yeah, well, you know, my access came from my uncle who was there, and I think the fact that there were millions of people who were in institutions like that brings up the question, wow, could that have happened to me? Could I have been in a place like that? And that's the thing that sort of launched me.
This is some of the video. I know a lot of people have family members, for instance, who you know, might be in their 30s or 40s with autism, who in the past, even 10, 15 years ago, may have been institutionalized. Today,
right,
they're in regular track education.
Entirely different landscape today, and yet the same human impulses. I mean, it was, in some ways, it was a real distant thing that created a place like Fernald. But in some ways, it's really alive today. I mean, to a certain extent, just categorizing people, creating differences, there's some enlightenment to that, some notion of, can we provide better services for people? I mean, these days, we don't provide services by large congregate care institutions. For the most part, really those services are delivered in communities, and yet, at the time, it was, going back to 1848 when the institution was formed, it was an improvement because people were locked in cellars, people were really particularly the severely disabled people were in horrendous conditions.
This video that we're looking at now these are photos from a long time ago, and as you say, the conditions then were in many cases horrendous. Now, some of the patients at Fernald actually worked in the lab as assistants, which sounds good, but then they were also experimented on, as we see in this clip.
Joe was also, along with 16 others, a member of the Fernald Science Club, in which they were the experiment. Researchers used radiation on them to test digestion.
I don't know why they took it out, but it was a crazy move.
Well, things changed a lot by the 1970s. The economy was going downhill, public attitudes were changing, there was a real move towards deinstitutionalization. Your Uncle Joe was put outside of Fernald for the first time in nearly 30 years. How did he adjust when he moved outside of Fernald?
There are a lot of questions. How would he be able to thrive? Would he be able to survive? And he did remarkably well. He was, towards the end of his life, he died. Today's his birthday, by the way.
Oh, happy
he died,
birthday.
yeah, we will have to send to Joe's spirit his happy birthday wishes, because he did wonderfully well. Towards the end of his life, he performed in blues clubs. He had his own apartment. He was a valued member of his community, and that from somebody who really was thought that he wouldn't survive, that he couldn't make it. He did.
Now, unlike Pineland, which many of us are familiar with, Fernald is still in operation. What's the future, and is it still considered to be a mental institution?
It is, you know, yeah, it is still part of the Department of Mental Retardation system. And the debate today is it appropriate to have people there? And the families of those 180 to 200 people who remain at Fernald feel very strongly that it's one of many options that's available to them. On the other side, there are those people, no, you have to provide all those services in community-based settings. I found that there's no easy answers to what is the best setting for providing those services.
A story that does not yet have a finish in terms of what is the proper way to treat for people who, what is the proper way to take care of people who need this care. Anyway,
it's another whole film.
Bill Rogers, the name of the film, yeah, this one is called Frontwards, Backwards, and it's going to be showing at the Maine International Film Festival in Waterville. It's going to be shown on Tuesday, July 17th at 5:30 p.m. at the Railroad Square Cinema. Additional screenings coming up at the Camden International Film Festival in September. We've got information on our website. Just go to the 207 section. When we come back, his talent...